Welcome back to the channel. Macintosh continues with the PowerBook 165. So I managed to pick up this PowerBook 165 relatively cheap. It was a few months ago. I managed to get it cheap because it's not working, and that seems to be a bit of a theme in my videos, isn't it? I seem to buy things that don't seem to be working. It's not working in the sense that it doesn't boot, but it does actually switch on, and we'll be exploring that in a little bit. But first of all, let's have a little look at the features of the 165. Okay, here we have it, the PowerBook 165. This one's in pretty good condition physically. Externally, there's not really much scratches or scrapes. It's still got its original colour logo on. And yeah, it's not too discoloured. There's a slight difference in the colour between the screen housing and the palm rest. I'm not sure if that's because anything's been changed at any point, but maybe that's just normal aging. On the left hand side here we have the battery cover, and in fact if you remove this you can see there's no battery in here. The battery that did come with this was leaking when I got it, so I took it out straight away to preserve the rest of the machine. Hopefully it hasn't done too much damage, but this little cover covers up so that it looks nice and fresh when there isn't a battery installed. At the back it has a little foot which you can rotate to increase the typing angle. Same on the other side, obviously. Again, that's a very slightly different colour, so it's aged at a different rate. Hinge covers seem to be in place, which is nice. Around the other side, we have the floppy disk drive, so 1.44 megabyte super drive, so it can read and write Apple and PC disks. Same rotating foot here. Around the back initially, there's not a lot to see. There's the power in and a presumably Kensington lock, not an Apple proprietary lock there. And then there's this panel, which it's unusual to get these with the panel still intact, behind which we have various different ports. Got the power switch, you've got your two programmers buttons down here, you've got two serial ports, audio in and out, ADB, and a high density SCSI port. You've also got this high density video out. There's a blanking plate here for what presumably must have been a modem, I would guess, and there's a slight recess here. It may be possible that you could personalize it with a message, or maybe there was a serial number supposed to go in here. But again, it's nice to have the drawer intact. Can't see any corrosion on any of these, so that's very nice. Okay, let's open it up. So there's a single catch, you have to move it to the right, and then the lid springs open a little bit. Hinge is still good friction, and we reveal a very nice keyboard. It's a little bit spongy, and this one's a little bit grubby in places as well, but we have a trackball, so we don't have a touchpad at this point in Apple history. We still have a trackball with two buttons, same as the original Macintosh Portable. Keyboard's not bad, decent size, decent travel, nice keys. Just under the screen here we've got a brightness and contrast controllers, and then we have the screen itself. Vent here, which I presume is for a speaker, and underneath that there's some little vents which I'm presuming are for a microphone. So the screen on the 165 is a passive matrix display, hence you've got a brightness and a contrast control. They never made a 165 or a 160 with a active matrix screen. You had to go to the higher end models in the range to get that. They did do a colour version of this. This is the standard monochrome, except it's not truly monochrome, it is actually 4-bit grey. So you've got 16 levels of grey. So unlike the Macintosh Classic 2 that we looked at very recently, this is a little bit more advanced. This came out in 1993, which was the end of the Classic 2's production run. So things have moved on a little bit, we've gone from 1-bit to 4-bit monochrome graphics. The screen size is 9.8 inches, 10 inches give or take. Resolution wise it's 640 by 400, so not quite VGA. Apple was working to a slightly different resolution at that point. So originally these would have come with the Macintosh OS 7.1, and they can run through 7.1 through to 7.6. That limitation presumably is the 68030 processor, which runs at 33 megahertz in this example. Okay, we're going to try and take this apart. I've never done this before, and the reason I want to take it apart is that when I did get it, first of all, I did switch it on, and the machine had some problems. The screen came on, the backlight came on, but it was quite flickery, And there is a known problem with this series of computers in that the capacitors, which are kind of in this area of the screen, they can age and cause the screen to fail. And kind of flickering and shimmering is kind of an early sign of that. So there's definitely work to be done on the screen. Not for me, but I'll find somebody to do that. But there is another problem. When I opened the battery compartment and took out the battery, the RF shielding, which is kind of like a very thin metallicized film on the inside of the case, kept falling off. And at one point I put a floppy disk in the floppy disk drive, couldn't read it, but when I took it out it was covered in little flakes of silver. So I think what's happened is that electronically conductive RF shielding has got inside and on the motherboard and inside the internals, and that's what's stopping it from booting. Now there may well be more to it than that. There may be that the capacitors on the motherboard are bad, or there's some other problem, but I think that's the main problem. So I don't want to keep on turning it on in case there is a short in there. So let's just try and take it apart first and see what happens. So these are allegedly relatively easy to get into, unlike modern Apple products, but I've never done one before, so I'm just going to take it a little bit slowly. But the first thing to do is remove this rear cover, and we're going to try and do that without breaking it, but I think that's going to be very tricky. This style of thing where you've got a very small plastic lug is very difficult to take off safely. Managed it. Phew. So apparently there's one screw back here, which is just here, and again in Apple style you'll need some Torx drivers to get into these, not a standard Phillips head. So this one's a T6 on the back. Doesn't appear to be corroded, so that's a good start. Then we have 4 more on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. These apparently are T8s. Let's try and get them out. Let's come out fairly easily. None of them are near the battery compartment, so I'm hoping, well, I suppose this one is and this one is, I'm hoping they haven't corroded in place. That's going to make things much more difficult. Looking good so far. Okay, famous last words. That didn't feel like it's attached to anything, but it's also not coming out. Yeah, it's wobbling around. So I don't know if you can see this, but the standoff it's attached to is broken. Now, if it's broken, that means it's not holding anything in place. Let's take the battery cover off as well. Don't need that. So this bottom part should now be loose, and apparently it's most loose at the back. In fact, you can see that already. These 2 bits of plastic are separated. So let's gently pry this up. Doesn't feel loose. So under here is a ribbon cable. Feels like the whole case is catching on something. Let's go to the front of the case. So apparently there are 2 plastic tabs near the front that need to be loosened. Oh look. There's more of that metallicized material I was talking of. I think that's what's got all over the internals, and it's causing some shorts. See, it's on the mat. So I presume the battery leak caused that. There's one catch undone. So I can feel it's just about there. So that one doesn't quite want to pop out. So these plastics are now 30 2 years old. They seem a little bit better than the plastics Apple were using just a few years later on their PowerPC range. Being a little bit reluctant. Just go back to the back, because you should be able to lift this up enough to get to the ribbon cable. We can't still. I don't think it's related to this screw. Yeah, that's just collapsed inside now. Feels like I'm missing a screw. So the plastic's moving up, but the motherboard isn't. And I'm not sure whether they're both supposed to come or whether it's just one of them. So maybe the motherboard and the plastic are supposed to separate at this point. It's moving a little bit. So it looks like the motherboard and the plastic are supposed to come together. Let's try gravity. Here we go. Now we can see the ribbon cable that joins the top half and the bottom half. It's just here. And it looks essentially like an IDE connector. So I'm just going to put a splasher through the holes, just to prise apart that connector. Goodness knows how we're going to get that back together when we are reassembling. Okay, so as you can see, a whole host of debris has come out, and here's that metallicized RF shell just flaking away. So we definitely need to dispose of all of that before it's put back together. It's super thin and super fragile. Don't want that getting any other electrical stuff I've got, because it will cause havoc. So it seems to be on the underside of the palm rest. Extremely satisfying. It's like picking a scab. Yeah, sorry, that's a bit gross, isn't it? I'm just going to turn that upside down just to get it all out, rather than spreading it around. So it looks like it used to cover the underside of the palm rest on both sides, the battery side and this side, which appears to be where the hard drive is. So some of the other things that have come out is the so the screw and the standoff that were holding the two parts together, they've come out, but this has fallen to pieces and the screw's very corroded. So there's definitely been some kind of leakage inside here, probably from that faulty battery. I just want to get rid of as much of this as I can. So we're going to need a vacuum. This is the trackpad assembly. Let's remove that while we're at it, just so we can get this area clean. Looks like it's got a push fit connector here, so let's just loosen the sides off, and then this should come out. Here we go. Now we have the trackball assembly. So I'm just going to go get a hoover before we go any further. So we've discovered some more underneath the trackpad here. Just brushing with a hoover made it fall off. Let's get it out. So I'm guessing that it's mainly heat that's done this, because it's happening on both sides. Just need to loosen it off so we can get rid of it. It runs down the side here as well, look. Runs down the side. seems more firmly attached the further back you go. Also on this side. Yeah, that's basically just falling off, isn't it? Look at how much has fallen out. So this is the other side. So what we have, we've just been dealing with the palm rest and the screen assembly. This is the actual motherboard and base. And again, we've got residue of that silver stuff everywhere. So let's try and tidy some of that up. So this is the underside of the battery compartment. Looks like you can see through these access panels as well. So this has probably all just got to come out so that we can get rid of it all. So in terms of layout, we have the hard drive here. I think it's a SCSI drive on these, cable, optical drive, battery compartments over in this corner. Trackball would fit into this space when the two halves are reassembled. There's a 2-layer of boards. There's a bottom kind of motherboard, and then there's this daughter board on the top. This was the connector for the display, and then this is the add-on memory connector. So this comes with 4 megabytes as standard on this card, and you can add 10 more with a specific memory card that lies across the top here, I think. These are presumably to protect the underlying components rather than be heat transfer being made of foam. But everything's covered in dust, everything's covered in little bits of silver. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of shorts going on across this whole motherboard. Don't forget the battery was leaking as well, so there may well be some corrosion. Yeah, so let's get this apart and see if we can clean up these boards as best we can. So it looks like this is held in place by 4 screws. Again, they are Torx. Are they 6s or 8s? Looks like they're 6s. This board, as well as connecting to the screen through this connector here, it also has the video out on the back on it, which kind of makes sense. If this board is already handling the video, why not? So I'm assuming this just lifts out. I'm assuming I can see a connector at this end. I'm assuming there's another one somewhere, or a standoff, and then these 2 boards just come apart. This feels like it wants to come out, but it is connected to what presumably is a temperature sensor on the side you can't see from the camera. So I can't just pull it out. We're going to have to wait to take this top board off first. So there's a connector along this edge here that I can definitely see. Can we prise it apart? At the moment the whole thing wants to come out. So it feels like it's only connected at this end. It's quite wobbly at the far end. The problem is the bottom motherboard wants to come with it. Assuming it's the same connector as this, or a similar design, we need to separate it underneath this board rather than on top of that board. Just check I haven't missed any screws first. I haven't. There we go, came out a little bit too quickly for me. And there's a standoff here, that seems to be in very good condition. So this is not connected in any other way, there's no other ribbon cables or anything. But we need to give this a clean, get rid of all those small electrical bits. I don't know if you can see here, but there's metallic material lying across at least 3 legs of that one. There was a big chunk over on this one. It's a little bit around the back. So it's not surprising this wasn't actually starting up. Don't know if you can read that, but it says NORAD, which is interesting. I don't know if that's a code name. So we are left with the motherboard itself. So here's that connector connecting what is presumably a thermal sensor to the battery. Let's try and lift that up. There we go. Okay, that's not what I was expecting to happen, but that's a reasonable result. So in fact we can leave that attached. SCSI drive cable, let's disconnect that. Excellent, and there's a floppy drive connector here. Again, it's got pull-up tabs on it. Let's take off these spacers. These all appear to be the same. It's interesting that they are metallically coated. So let's get this ribbon cable out of here. There we go. So there's a single piece bracket that covers the floppy disk drive and the hard drive. Looks like they may all come out as one piece. Let's give it a try. So I'm guessing these are T6s again, looks like it. And again, it feels like that standoff was broken underneath it. It is. Both of them are. That's a shame. This one's not even attached. Neither is that one. And I'm sure this one's going to break as soon as I turn it, given how torquey it is. Yeah, that's come off. So, in fact, so if it wasn't for this one at the back here being broken, that would come straight off. So this one here, it's broken the standoff, and the little brass inserts come with it. But I think it's also attached to this lower metal sheet, so it's not. Oh, there you go. It's now come loose. So in theory, this should all just lift off now. Yep. Again, there's a very fine dust over everything, metallic dust. We have to find a good way of cleaning this. And I'm not sure what we can do about these standoffs. So many of them are broken. It's going to be a little bit fiddly to deal with that. Let's try and take out the floppy drive. So that's come out fairly easily. So yeah, these standoffs have just collapsed. No longer functioning. It may be possible to repair one of them, this one, but I think the others potentially are beyond repair. So I've just removed two standoffs with a hollow driver. So the motherboard should now be free to remove, which it is. So I don't know how that's coming out on camera, but there is some corrosion here on the battery terminals themselves, but I can't see on the far side. So it looks like the battery was taken out just in time before it spread across the motherboard. But again, we've got little bits of foil everywhere, causing massive shorts. Hopefully that hasn't done any permanent damage. Hopefully when we clean the board, we can get rid of all that and get it started. Okay, so we're nearly at the bottom. So there seems to be a plastic insulating sheet in the bottom. Feels like metallicized plastic, but it isn't flaking, unlike the rest of the case. Another broken standoff. Another broken standoff. I'm not sure this is going to go back together. Another broken standoff. Wow. Okay. And then we've got this RF shield here in the bottom, under which there is loads more of this metallic coating that's coming off. So we still need to get this out as well. It looks like it just lifts up, but it's a little bit snug around here. There you go. So there's nothing specific holding it in place. There's a couple of little plastic standouts that go through holes in the plastic, and they may have been melted over, but only very marginally, so they're just popping off. At least the first one did. There you go. Again, you can see how bad this foil stuff is. It's immensely satisfying, but completely incompatible with a functioning computer. Sorry about the noise. I've got a feeling I'll be cleaning this stuff off my desk for weeks to come. It's definitely the front half of the case that's been affected, and this side a little bit as well, so maybe it's a heat thing. The area under the floppy drive hasn't been really affected. Okay, let's try and get it cleaned up. If there's any more to come loose, I need it to come off now, not later. So if you have a PowerBook 160, 140, 165, 145, has this ever happened to you? I don't remember ever reading about this being documented anywhere, so I don't know if it's a one-off or whether it does happen all the time. So because it's so powdery, we're going to have to wash this under running water. Just hoovering it isn't going to get it all off. Okay, so I've cleaned out the case as best I can and let that to dry, cleaned up under running water. Obviously, don't want to run these on the water, and I haven't got enough IPA to completely submerge all of the components. So what I've done is tapped out as much of the dust as I can, hoovered the rest, and now I'm looking at each individual component to see if there's any kind of residue on them, and then I might just use a soft cloth to get rid of any extra bits, because there are still a few very small bits coming off these boards. I've got no idea whether this is going to work ever again, but we can certainly have a little go at brushing these with a fine brush. There is some corrosion here on the battery terminals which we need to deal with as well. What I've also noticed is there's a little bit of corrosion here on the hard disk connector as well. I presume that was in close proximity to the battery, which is why that's happened. It's not completely clear, but it seems pretty limited to the connector on the side here. There doesn't seem to be anywhere else, so we'll need to clean that up as well. This board seems to be pretty much good to go, apart from it has still got some residual dust on it which needs to be brushed out. It's just got everywhere this very fine metallic dust. Never seen this happen before. I don't know if it's very specific to this model, but it has caused a bit of a nightmare. So let's start with this component. Just gonna brush it with a paintbrush. Possibly not the most exciting YouTube video you've ever seen. The bits are definitely still coming off. There's a fine dust forming just here. These pads on the top are very slightly kind of sticky, so there is some stuck to that which I just can't seem to remove. But we'll just keep trying. Cotton bud and IPA might be the best way to go, but that might dissolve the pad. Now I managed to get a hair stuck in this connector. There we go. So obviously this brush is shedding some hairs, which is not ideal, but it's the only one I have to hand. Let's do the other side of the board. So I'm specifically starting at the top and just working my way down so that I don't spread what I've managed to get off back onto bits I've already cleaned. Okay, there's one done. Let's move on to the next one. It's only looking a little bit less dusty. It kind of just looks cleaner, a little bit shinier. So we just need to get the hard drive out, just so we can clean it separately. It'll also allow us to see if the connector's damaged under there, which it is a little bit, I think. Oh no, looks okay. So these standoffs potentially going to be a problem. To be honest, what I think I might do is just put them back in as is and not worry about them, because the confines of the case are so restrictive, nothing's actually going to move around. It's not going to survive, you know, being put on an aeroplane or anything without these standoffs attached, but it's not going to be going anywhere like that. You can just feel the dust on this cable just by picking it up. Then you can see on my fingertips, they just kind of look a bit dull. It's got very fine dust on everything. And then the hard drive has got some corrosion down this side from the battery. It is an Apple original hard drive made by IBM. 80 megabytes, SCSI. It's interesting, it's got that copper jacket. Not sure why specifically it has that. It's a little bit unusual. So we need to deal with this corrosion. So the other thing we haven't looked at yet is the floppy disk drive. As I said, when I put a floppy disk in originally, it did come out with some bits of the metallic lining on it. So I'm guessing there's some inside the drive. So we are going to have to take that apart and give it a quick service as well. Externally, it doesn't look too bad though. Okay, let's see what we can do about the corrosion. So as you can see, it's quite blue here in the middle of the connector. So we're just going to use a solution of vinegar just to try and neutralize that. I can't submerge the whole thing. Given that it's a hard drive. So I'm having to paint it on. So I can't see from this angle whether it's bubbling up or not. Let's hope it is. So what we're going to do is try and neutralize the battery alkali that's there, and then just by brushing it, hopefully we're just going to remove some of that corrosion. The corrosion doesn't look too bad. I don't think it's actually damaged the connectivity of those pins, but we want to make sure it doesn't get any worse. I don't know if that's any better. I'm not sure if it's the change in the light, but it looks better. It's been on there for a few minutes now. Okay, so we're going to have to rinse it off in a bit. Let's just dab away any excess first of all. So what about these side portions now? I'm a bit worried about the copper, because that may react to the acid solution just as much as the battery leak has. So the hard drive's had a clean and a rinse with water, and is now having an IPA rinse to get rid of the water. So let's try and deal with the battery contact. Yeah, I'm going to try and avoid getting it everywhere. We just want to get it just on there. I can't see from here, but it may be showing up on the camera whether that's bubbling or not. Certainly some of the green is coming away, so that's reassuring. I'm just going to take this thermal diode off just in case we get that contacted. Well, it's certainly better than it was. It's not perfect yet. I'll keep at it for a little bit longer, and then again we'll do the water rinse followed by an IPA rinse. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, let's turn our attention to the floppy disk drive. That's what gave me the clue that there was something wrong in the first place, because when I put a disk in and it came back out covered in that metallic foil. It's a little bit of an odd design. Oh, I see, there's two rails on the bottom here, which are the caddy. And then this must be the eject motor, I'm guessing, because that doesn't normally present on a floppy disk drive, is it? This kind of little bit at the back. Okay, let's take the rails off, see if we can get inside. So these are standard small Phillips. I'm guessing that makes sense because the drive would have been made by a third party, not by Apple. So changing the torques probably wouldn't have been that convenient. I've hoovered the desk underneath here, so whatever is left over after we've done this has come out of the drive in terms of those little bits of metal. So in terms of getting the cover off, it looks like it's a standard little clips that you need to loosen so that it just pops off. Historically, I use a screwdriver for this. Looks like it's going to work today. There we go, and you can see already there's some bits of foil in here. Is there anything on the drive itself? It's hard to say from this angle, unfortunately. We're not going to be able to get in through the bottom, so we're going to have to have a look at possibly removing this motherboard. It does kind of look like though it's riveted in place. That can't be right, can it? Look at that, bits coming out. This is going to be problematic if we can't get into this drive. Okay, I think we're going to have to, we're just going to have to tap it out, shake it out, brush it out as much as we can, and then clean the heads through the little gap as best we can. So it is coming out. Oh, chunk there, look, big piece. We can probably get this front rail off and then at least in from the front. Just quickly looking at where the spring goes before I lose it. There we go. Not much coming out the front, interestingly. So the rate at which it's coming out is reducing, which is good. So I can't believe you can't take this motherboard off, but I can't see any screws. There is what looks like a pop rivet here. Very interesting design, but I think that's as much as we can get out just by tapping. Let's try hoovering next. Okay, let's see if we can get to the heads. I'm just going to put a cotton bud up through here as well. Okay, I'm just going to brush these surfaces with a cotton bud, see if we get anything else coming out. So this is a direct drive motor. There's no belt on this one. It's a Sony branded drive, which I think most of the Apple drives were for quite some time actually. Through into the late 90s when they abandoned drives altogether. Floppy drives, that is. You have the iMac coming out with no floppy drive at all. Okay, so some dust has come out, but I can't see any metallic particles. That's good. Let's try and clean the heads. Sorry, you can't really see that on the camera. Nothing obvious showing. That's good. I can't get to any worm gears from this side. I've got access to the sliding rail here. Doesn't look gummy. It looks pretty clean. So I'm not going to mess with that for now. I think we're just going to put it back together. Now we've got as much out as we can. So if you know how to service these better, what I need to take off here, then please leave a comment below because I would be interested. Never seen one of these before. Okay, so we're going to try and get this thing back together. So try and remember how everything goes in. Yep, every time you turn around, a bit of plastic pops off, so this is going to be tricky. So the motherboard has had a few hours to dry, seems to have worked. So that went in somewhere around here. Now the two bolts that went through here are the standoffs that go into are still present, so that's one good thing. Let's get those in loosely. I'm just paranoid now. Anything that's shiny on there, I'm just blowing it away just in case it's a bit of metal. So let's get the drive assembly reassembled. I'm not sure if there's any corrosion in here. Do you know what? I'm going to put some deoxit in there just in case. Given the amount of damage to this machine, I'm giving it about a 50-50 chance of it ever working again. We might be able to salvage the hard drive though. 2.5-inch SCSI hard drives are a little bit hard to come by, so that might be a win. So that's back on there. So floppy drive came out of here. Seems to just fit in by these tabs just to position it. Let's deoxit this connector as well. So the metal bracket that went over the top was secured in place with these standoffs, which are all now missing. So that isn't going to work. I see here down at the front there's a little clip though on the which has survived, so that's one point of contact. Let's just quickly deoxit the other connectors on this board while we're at it. So that's the one for the temperature sensor. This is the one for the board that goes in the top. There's another one over here. I can't remember what that one was for. Let's just do that while we're at it. And in fact, let's put that temperature sensor back in before I lose it. So that came off this little component, which maybe I should have put in first, because I think it was tucked under the motherboard, wasn't it? That's gone in fine afterwards. Plug the sensor into its little recess. I'm still touching some things and I'm getting this feeling that I've still got dust everywhere, which isn't good. So next thing to go in was this separate board. So we haven't really done much with the lid. I've hoovered it twice in fact, and I scraped off some more of the coating from the underside of the palm rest. It's going to give it a final rub with a cloth just to make sure we're not missing anything. But it is coming up a little bit shiny still. I've got out as much as I can, I think. There is a PRAM battery here. I have seen people take these out. This one doesn't look like it's leaking, and it's not the kind that normally does in my experience. I don't know whether this will fail to boot without a PRAM battery in, so I'm actually going to leave that in place for now. It's not that hard to get to. You only have to separate the top and the bottom cases, so potentially it is easy to get to, or possibly even replace, but I'm actually going to leave that there for now. The problem we're going to have is reconnecting this connector here when we put the two parts of the case back together. We need to put the track pad back in. That's one thing I haven't actually cleaned, so let me do that. The button action on these sounds great. So it just falls into place and is held in place by screws from this side, but the standoffs are broken off, so this is actually now going to be loose in the case. I'm hoping something is going to keep it in place when we turn it upside down. Let's get the cable connected. Let's try and get the top and the bottom halves back together. We've got no standoffs holding anything into place. This is going to be tricky. I think I'm going to do this vertically. So yeah, I don't know if this is going to work, but I've just put this with the lid partly open. And then we're going to offer this up. There are two clips at the bottom which have got to go in anyway, so doing it this way kind of makes sense. Okay, we're roughly in the right position. I can see the cable in there is in the right position, but I need to get it to join up. So what's going to be the best tool for that? It's got to go through these apertures on the back. Hey, Looks like some kind of screwdriver through the video port is the way to go. Now it seems to be together. So the front of the case is being held by these two clips. And in the back there is a screw here that goes through into a metal plate. So we've got point of contact at the front and the back. The 4 screws though, they're never going to tighten up because the standoffs are broken off. We can use the battery compartment cover to hold the case together as well. In fact, let's put that on now. That will definitely help. So this is going to be quite a fragile computer going forward, but at least we've done our best on it. So let's put our screw in the back. Don't want to over tighten it in case we break anything. Why have I got 4 screws left over? What have I forgotten to do? That's a concern. I've got the 4 screws that go in the bottom of the case. Let me try putting one of them in, because I think one of them, the standoff, is still here. Yes. Yes. That has worked. That one's definitely missing. I think I can see threads in these two though, so let's keep going. Okay, so amazingly, 3 of the 4 screws have gone in the back. That is great. I have 4 screws left over. So I've obviously forgotten to screw something down. For the purposes of getting this video finished, I'm going to leave those out and then retrace my steps off camera and see where they should have gone. What we're more interested in is it going to turn on? I'm not going to put this back cover back on because I am, as I said, about to take it apart again. I'm just going to try and turn it on, see if it gets going. See if we've improved this unit at all. There's still metallic bits on the screen. I've already cleaned that once or twice. And there's a bit there in the keyboard. Okay, so I don't have a power supply for this. I need a universal power supply. At least take a very low voltage. I think it's 7.5 volts, isn't it? So let's give it a go. Okay, I have the power supply set at 7.5 volts. Let's plug it in. Let's press the power button. Backlights come on, but no noise, no hard drive, no chime. Yeah, nothing. Oh, and there's also a bit of fleck of that orange metallic stuff's managed to get inside the screen. That's disappointing. Let's just power cycle it, see if that makes a difference. This machine hasn't been on for a long time. PRAM battery is going to be flat. Yeah, screen comes on, but no life from the machine itself. That's a little disappointing. I said it was 50-50. We're just on the wrong half of that. Oh, there's a chime. I have a grey screen and a cursor. Hard drive's just spun up. And we have a happy Mac. So I don't know if you can see that mark there in the screen. I don't think that was there before. So I can hear the hard drive spinning up. Holy moly! Welcome to Macintosh. Is it actually going to boot? Looks like it. We're getting progress. So the screen's flickering, and it was before. That's totally fine. That's because it needs recapping. I'm happy with that. We're going to get a desktop. Let me just adjust the brightness and the contrast a little bit. There's something there, I just can't quite see it. Haha! And there it is! We have a booted Mac. That surprises me. I'm very impressed that that has actually worked. The screen's kind of settling down a little bit as well. So this is a dual scan display. It's not active matrix, it's not the top end. Contrast is pretty good. The mouse is submarining as well. The other thing that should be pointing out is that actually the trackball still works after everything has been through. And it doesn't feel too loose in the chassis either. That's nice. Holy moly, what have we actually got? PowerBook 165, system software 7.1, built-in memory 4 megs, so that's the standard. So system software is using half of that 4 megs. So it'd be nice to have had more memory, but we have a working system. That's more than I'd actually hoped we would get. That is great. That is really good. It looks like there's a load of stuff on here. It's got Risk, Backgammon Bridge, Minesweeper Daleks. Somebody was a little bit of a board game type user. So hard disk wise, it's a 65 megabyte on disk, 11 megabytes is available. So I think this is actually an 80 megabyte disk, isn't it? GNU Chess. So that's still present on Macs today in a different format. Oh, my trackball's just stopped working. The hard disk is no longer making access noises, although it's still spinning. Has it crashed? It looks like it might have. Oh no, are we doing so well? Okay, let's try that again. Appears to be booting again. You can see the dual scan effect. Again, it's going very light and dark, it's quite flickery. I'm not sure if that's coming across on the camera, but those screen capacitors will need sorting out soon. So there's quite a lot of extensions here being added that I don't recognise. I don't know if that's anything to do with why it crashed, whether it's actually got an issue with something that's installed rather than a hardware issue. Okay, so the mouse cursor is working again, so the trackball is working. It wasn't that it was faulty. Let's just close all these windows. So we've got some files on the desktop: cover copy, file 2, res letter, Tom Salesian, waste basket's full. There's a temporary folder. Not sure what DD is. Disk doubler. Okay, so it's got some software to installed to increase the size of the hard disk. That could certainly be an issue if it's not running well. Screen stabilized again. I think the capacitors are working, but they're on their last legs, and now they've got a bit of charge in them. They seem to be a bit more stable. So there's quite a lot of big apps on here. That's probably why they put the disk doubling software in. Let's try loading one of these files, cover. So I'm assuming this is some kind of cover sheet. I think the thing with the booting is, because the PRAM battery is completely flat, when you take the power away, it then needs a couple of boots just to get enough power to boot the system. So this product licensed to the Oasis Group Limited. Well, ironically, there's a group called the Oasis Group, which is a secure information and document management company. Hopefully they wouldn't be discarding computers without wiping them, so I'm guessing it's not them. It's amazing how removing colour removes your clues as to what's going on the screen. I'm sure you could be used to it if you'd only ever seen black and white or monochrome or grayscale, but when you're used to seeing things in colour, you remove the colour, it is actually quite disorientating. Oh look, we've got a spreadsheet here with telephone numbers in it. Yeah, let's not open that up on the internet, eh? What are the dates on some of these things? June 1999 was the last time it was used by the looks of it, which is when some of these document folders were created. Earliest date seems to be 1993. This product was actually introduced in 1993, so that makes sense that these were the earliest files. Okay, one last thing to test, which we haven't done yet so far, is check the floppy disk drive, see if it's working. It's making the right noises. So it's recognised it, but it's now refusing to open it. Thought it was going to work. I know. And suddenly it comes to life. Something's happening. It's not actually opening, but this disk label makes me think it's a DOS install disk. They have these funny labels with the spaces in. Okay, well, it's managed to read the directory. Can it actually read a file? Looks like it can. It's taking a long time to read it, maybe because it's a PC formatted one. So let's just eject it and have a look at the disk surface, see if it's covered in silver stuff. Assuming the disk will eject. Okay, so the eject mechanism works. There's a couple of small specks of the silver stuff on the surface of the drive, of the disk. So we haven't got rid of all of it, unfortunately. Looking at the surface, I can't see anything actually on the surface, but there's definitely a few residue on the actual casing itself, which is a shame, but it kind of works. So I think I'll call the video there. We have managed to make this machine work. I'm not sure for how much longer, but you know, the caps in the screen will definitely need replacing at some point. The screen seems to be stabilising though the more we used it, so that's really reassuring. I've never seen this mode of failure before in a laptop. I've never seen that coating come off to such an extent. Something weird has happened to it. I don't think that's normal. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience with their PowerBook 160, 165, 140, 180, any of that range. There's still some work to be done. We need to clean the keyboard. It's a bit grubby in places, and we've got those 4 missing, well, 4 surplus screws. I don't know where they've come from, so I do need to take it back apart and put those in. But actually, we do have now essentially a fully functional PowerBook 165, and they're getting pretty rare in working condition these days. So I'm really pleased that we managed to get it working. You know, it's not as robust as it was with all those missing standoffs, but everything seems to be working, so that's really good. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give a thumbs up. Also subscribe if you like to see this kind of thing. March and Toss continues. There will be another video coming out in another couple of weeks. YouTube's going to recommend some videos. Feel free to have a look at those. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next one.